Every once in a while, a motorcycle comes along that offers so much value on paper, people start forming opinions before they have even had a chance to ride it. The TVS Apache RTX 300 is one of those motorcycles. But spec sheets don't tell you how a motorcycle feels to ride, and I had a few questions I wanted answered. Like, does it still carry the sharp handling that the Apache name is known for? Is this motorcycle all about value, or is there real substance behind that juicy price tag? And as someone who's on the shorter side, is this tall looking ADV actually easy to live with? Well, I finally got some proper time with it. So welcome everyone to my review of the TVS Apache RTX 300. The first thing that put me at ease was the engine. I was looking forward to trying this new 300 because the old 310 engine was never something I connected with. Thankfully, this new ground-up TVS 300 is a clear step forward. It's smoother, revs more freely, and while I wouldn't call it the most characterful engine in the segment, it's a properly competent one. One thing TVS has always done well is engine tuning. They give their bikes a healthy low end without sacrificing the mid-range or top end. It reminded me of my old Apache RTR 180, which I owned for almost 15 years. That bike always felt eager from low RPM while still rewarding you when you revved it out, and the RTX brought back the same feeling. Whether I was riding at low speeds through the mid-range or stretching it towards the top end, the engine never left me wishing for more. Safe to say then, that was one question answered. Of course, an Apache has never been remembered only because of its engine. It's always been about the way it handles. As soon as the road started opening up and the corners arrived, it didn't take me long to realize TVS hasn't forgotten what made the Apache name special in the first place. Despite the 19-inch front wheel and the longer travel suspension, the front end communicates beautifully. You always know where the tire is and how much grip you have in hand, and placing the bike exactly where you want it quickly becomes second nature. It's one of those motorcycles that encourages you to carry a little more speed into every corner simply because it feels so composed underneath you. And honestly, that's not what I was expecting from an adventure bike with this kind of setup. Even the soundtrack feels familiar. The exhaust still has that slightly bassy Apache character. It's not particularly memorable, but to be fair, there's only so much drama you can expect from a modern single-cylinder engine. But open the throttle wide and the induction sound more than makes up for it. It feels unmistakably like an Apache. The next thing I was curious about was the suspension. I expected it to be decent, maybe slightly on the firmer side so that the sharp handling stays intact. Instead, it turned out to be surprisingly supple. No, it isn't an X-Pulse 210. That bike still has another level of plushness and off-road capability, but I expected the gap between the two to be much bigger. Whether it was potholes, uneven patches, or mildly broken roads, the TVS dealt with them without making a fuss. It just felt comfortable. What impressed me even more was that this comfort didn't come at the expense of composure. Even under hard braking, there wasn't excessive front-end dive you'd normally expect from a motorcycle with softer suspension. It stayed well controlled, which is exactly the balance I had hoped from a great adventure bike. Another pleasant surprise was how manageable it felt. The seat height on paper, along with the wider ADV bodywork, I was expecting this to feel taller than my X-Pulse. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Even as a short rider, I found it surprisingly decent to manage. By this point, the engine, chassis, and suspension had all impressed me, and that made me notice all the little extra things that were making an already good motorcycle even nicer to ride. The quickshifter is a good example. Even though KTM's is still a touch smoother, this one isn't far behind. More importantly, after a few gear changes, I completely stopped thinking about it, which is probably the biggest compliment you can give any piece of technology. The cruise control is another feature that's been really well thought out. The minimum speed changes depending on the gear you're in, so I could engage it as low as around 25 kmph. That makes it useful in far more situations than just highway touring. Then there's also TVS glide through technology, which is handy when you're crawling through traffic or simply just taking things easy. And finally, there's Google Maps integration. I wasn't able to properly test it during my ride, but it's nice to see manufacturers moving in that direction. Of course, no motorcycle gets everything right, and TVS has few compromises too. Most of them though come down to personal preference. I've never been the biggest fan of large ADV fairings. I prefer motorcycles that feel visually lighter, almost like you're floating through the road with very little bike in front of you. The RTX, like most modern adventure bikes, has a much bigger presence than I'd personally choose. The wider tank adds to that feeling. It never gets in the way once you're riding, but while simply sitting on the bike, you do notice the extra width. And despite all that bodywork, I still experience more wind buffeting than I had hoped for. The TFT display itself is excellent, but those thick bezels around it make it look a little dated compared to the rest of the motorcycle. The navigation system also feels like it has a lot more potential than what it currently delivers. I'd love to see TVS improve the software experience, or even better, just give us proper Google Map support with the phone screen switched off. I think Royal Enfield has recently figured that out. One thing I also wish TVS would reconsider is not locking their test bikes to the lower riding mode. But before that, finding a test ride itself can be a hit or miss depending on the dealership, and once you have decided to buy, waiting periods are still longer than they should ideally be. Finally, much like Hero MotoCorp, TVS still has work to do when it comes to after-sales support. The motorcycles are now world-class. The buying and ownership experience still needs to catch up. At home, I already own two motorcycles that sit at opposite ends of the spectrum. My X-Pulse is the bike I take when comfort and rough roads are a priority. My Duke is a bike I ride when I want sharp handling and performance. The RTX lands almost perfectly between the two. In fact, I came away with one unexpected thought. If TVS built this exact motorcycle as a scrambler with the same engine, chassis, tires, suspension, just without all that bulky ADV bodywork, I think I'd prefer it over my X-Pulse. I never thought I'd say that going into riding this bike. When I first saw the RTX, I thought its biggest strength would be its value for money. After riding it, I think it's one of the least interesting things about it. Because even if you ignored the features, even if you ignored the price, this is still a very good motorcycle. If someone asked me for one motorcycle that could commute during the week, tour on the weekends, and handle occasional bad roads and still put a smile on your face in the corners on a weekend, this would be an easy recommendation. What a beautiful bike TVS has built. Thank you so much for watching the video. Do subscribe if you haven't. See you in the next one.